Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Judith.
Welcome to another Shabbat. And for those of our listeners who do not know what the Shabbat is, in the scriptures, in the Torah, the first five books of the Old Testament, God creates everything there is in 6 days. On the seventh day, He rests. He ceases from creation. He hallows it and says that we are to also rest. We are to cease from creation. He again reminds Israel when they are going out of Egypt to the land of Israel, and that when they're in the desert, the Midbar, He says to them, I will give you manna, and you're to collect manna each day, a certain amount. If you hold over any to the next day, it will spoil. But on the sixth day, you collect twice as much as you would on other days, and it won't spoil on the seventh day, because on the seventh day, you are not to go out. And so John says,
the Sabbath day is on God.
He makes provisions for us on the sixth day, so we do not have to go out on the seventh. We can hallow the Sabbath by ceasing from our usual activities. And in doing so, we sit before the King of Glory. It's an appointment He has made with each of us, each and every week. And we, in our, I'm not sure what it is, we choose not to meet with Him. He is there waiting for us. He's here waiting for us to meet with Him, because He has not changed. He's the same God who created the entire world, that everything is in it. And He has, from that time, says, I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you on this seventh day to sit with me and to learn from me, so that you can gain something in order to take into the next week. You will be replenished. And so we sit at this table, this magnificent table, where God has supplied all the food that's in it. We've cooked it all. We don't have to cook it. We don't have to go out and earn it. We don't have to go out into the store and buy it. We have it here with us. And we are going to learn from the King of the universe. And in all of the synagogues worldwide, they have a Torah portion. And the Torah is the first five books of the Old Testament, from Genesis to Deuteronomy. And we are in Deuteronomy because we're going up to the High Holy Days. We're ending this reading of the Torah. And so, the title of the Parshah for this week is Re'eh, which means see. And it's taken from Deuteronomy 11th chapter 26 through 16, 17. And in my Torah, it's divided into 5 parts. The first part being the divine command, Deuteronomy 11, 26 through 32. The second, the central sanctuary, Deuteronomy 12, 1 through 13, 1. The third, false prophets, Deuteronomy 13, 2 through 19. The fourth, of food, tithes, and social equity, Deuteronomy 14, 1 through 15, 23. And the holy days, Deuteronomy 16, 1 through 17. And it begins, Re'eh Anoki noten lefanechem hayom barcha ukala. See, this day I set before you blessing and curse.
John? Psalm 13. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? Forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall my enemies be exalted over me? Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Lighten mine eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest mine enemies say, I have prevailed against him, and those who trouble me rejoice when I am moved. But I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation. I will sing unto the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me. This is the word of the Lord. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. May your kingdom come, and may your will be done. We give thanks to you, Lord God, for you have brought us to and brought us into your Shabbat, the day that you created and blessed at the beginning of creation, and hallowed it and ceased from creation on this day. And through this day, all the other days of the week are blessed. And we wait for this day, Lord. As we wait for you, we wait for you to draw us closer to you and to be drawn closer to you so that we can give thanks to the God who has created us and has given us a purpose and has given us a task. And we give thanks, Lord. And we celebrate this day along with our brethren the Jews, whom you brought out of the house of bondage, out of Egypt, and gave them this command as well, that on the Sabbath day they should rest, because the Lord God of heaven, with a strong arm, delivered them from the house of bondage, and commanded them to remember this day forever and ever. And they, Lord, celebrate as we do, in song and prayer and thanksgiving and gladness of heart, remembering and thanking the God who has not forgotten us, but has delivered us. And Christ has delivered us also from the penalty of sin and separation and death. He has paid this debt and has given us life, and we celebrate the life he has given us, and we give thanks and pray you will continue to draw us closer to you as we desire to draw you closer to us. And we give thanks to the Son and the Spirit that remain. In his name we pray. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotze lechem min saor. Blessed art you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us bread from the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Re'eh5783. Blessed art you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us the fruit of the vine. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Judith.
All right. We will start with the first part, the divine command. Deuteronomy 11:26-32. See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Blessing, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I enjoin upon you this day. And curse, if you do not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn away from the path which I enjoin upon you this day, and follow other gods, whom you have not experienced. When the Lord your God, you all right?
Yeah.
When the Lord your God brings you into the land which you are about to invade and occupy, you shall pronounce the blessing at Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Ebal. Both are on the other side of the Jordan, beyond the west road, which is in the land of the Canaanites, who dwell in the Arabah, near Gilgal, by the terebinths of Moreh. For you are about to cross the Jordan to invade and occupy the land which the Lord your God is giving you. When you have occupied it and are settled in it, and take care to observe all the laws and rules that I have set before you this day. Well, it clearly, it is the divine command in that Moses is giving them instructions of what they are to do, upon entering the land. And again, the blessing and the curse. The blessing if you obey, and if you don't obey is a curse. I think it's pretty straightforward. God, there is something God requires of us, and if we do not comply, then there are consequences. John?
Yeah. There's this parsha starts off with a different. Well, a lot of the parsha start off with different words, but this one starts off with the word "see," and the last parsha started off with the words "listen." So first you listen to the commands, you keep them, preserve them, remember them, practice them. Now there's something God wants us to see. And what he wants us to see, blessings and cursing. Don't know why we want to give you two different commands. Just give us the blessing and not even worry about the curses. But that would negate free will. They have the option. They can choose to live a life that's consistent with blessings, or one that's not. Now, the idea and the free will part, God gives you the option, so you live with the consequences. You can't say, well, I had no choice. I didn't want this life, but I had no choice but to choose it. Here you choose it and you live with the consequences. And it's interesting, What's the interesting statement in here? That has to do with you not following any. I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself.
I think maybe you are, because you have to say something I don't think we've read yet.
Where it's you practice things that follow God you have not seen yet.
No, not seen, yeah.
Okay. Maybe I go a little ahead. Okay, but what happened, these blessings are read on two separate mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, why two mountains? And you may also ask, well, why mountains at all? But the idea of two mountains, it's it's like you can start at one point, and as you progress, let's say blessings, they become more and more of blessings. You become more and more blessed as when you follow them. But with curses, you can start at the bottom and you become worse and worse and worse. It's the idea of progressing more of a blessed life or more of a cursed life. When you think of, one teacher points out, you think of Jacob's ladder, where Jacob's ladder was firmly planted on the earth, but reached up to the heaven. So it was planted in materialism, but advanced into the spiritual. And the blessings here, start firmly on earth and reach to the spiritual, while the curses just sticks with the material. They don't go any further than that. One is to God wanted us to see how to live with Torah, and wanted us to see how things work when you don't live with Torah. One path leads to blessing and the other does not. And there is one, God did pick out one example. There's a difference between pleasure and happiness. The guy strung out on dope, he gets a lot of pleasure, but he ain't happy. Mm-hmm. Drugs lead to pleasure but not happiness, and this mountain of curses leads to pleasure but no happiness, while the mountain of blessing leads to happiness. Doesn't mean you're not going to have any ups and downs. Doesn't mean you're going to live a life, an easy life. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean tragedy won't come. Don't mean you won't be hungry from time to time. But it will be a life of happiness. Many people, I guess I could have named other professions where people are engaged in those professions and they just don't pan out. They see how worthless they are. And that's the life that's lived on a mountain that is one that is cursed. So one blessing is a life lived with Torah. One mountain is a life lived without Torah. And I hope I'm caught up.
Okay. All right. The second part. The central sanctuary, Deuteronomy 12:1 through 13:1. These are the laws and rules which you must carefully observe in the land that the Lord God of your fathers is giving you to possess. As long as you live on the earth, you must destroy all the sites at which the nations you are to dispossess worshipped their gods, whether on lofty mountains, and on hills, or under any luxuriant tree. Tear down their altars, smash their pillars, put their sacred posts to the fire, and cut down the images of their God, obliterating their name from the sight. Do not worship the Lord your God in like manner, but look only to the site that the Lord your God will choose amidst all your tribes at his habitation, to establish his name there. There you are to go, and there you are to bring your burnt offerings and other sacrifices, your tithes and your contributions, your votive and freewill offerings, and the firstlings of your herds and flocks. Together with your households, you shall feast there before the Lord your God, happy in all the undertakings in which the Lord your God has blessed you. You shall not act at all as we now act here, every man as he pleases, because you have not yet come to the allotted haven that the Lord your God is giving you. When you cross the Jordan and settle in the land that the Lord your God is allotting to you, and he grants you safety from all your enemies around you, and you live in security, then you must bring everything that I command you to the site where the Lord your God will choose to establish his name, your burnt offerings and other sacrifices, your tithes, your contributions, and all the choice votive offerings that you vow to the Lord. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God with your sons and daughters, with your male and female slaves, along with the Levite of your settlement, for he has no territorial allotment among you. Take care not to sacrifice your burnt offerings in any place you like, but only in the place which the Lord will choose in one of the tribal territories. There you shall sacrifice your burnt offerings, and there you shall observe all that I enjoin upon you. But whenever you desire, you may slaughter and eat meat in any of your settlements, according to the blessing which the Lord your God has granted you. The unclean and the clean alike may partake of it, as of the gazelle and the deer, but you must not partake of the blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. You may not partake in your settlements of the tithes of your new grain or wine or oil, or the firstlings of your herds and flocks, or any of the votive offerings that you vow, or of your freewill offerings, or of your contributions. These you must consume before the Lord your God in the place that the Lord your God will choose, you and your son and your daughter, your male and female slaves, and the Levite in your settlements, happy before the Lord your God in all your undertakings. Be sure not to neglect the Levite as long as you live in your land. When the Lord enlarges your territory and he has promised you, and you say, I shall eat some meat, for you have the urge to eat meat. You may eat your meat whenever you wish. If the place where the Lord has chosen to establish his name is too far from you, you may slaughter any of the cattle or sheep that the Lord gives you, as I have instructed you, and you may eat to your heart's content in your settlements. Eat it, however, as the gazelle and the deer are eaten. The unclean may eat it together with the clean, but make sure that you do not partake of the blood, for the blood is the life, and you must not consume the life with the flesh. You must not partake of it. You must pour it out on the ground like water. You must not partake of it in order that it may go well with you and with your descendants to come. For you will be doing what is right in the sight of the Lord. But such sacred and votive donations as you may have shall be taken by you to the site that the Lord will choose. You shall offer your burnt offerings, both the flesh and the blood, on the altar of the Lord your God. Of your other sacrifices, which shall be poured out on the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall eat the flesh. Be careful to heed all these commandments which I enjoin upon you. Thus it will go well with you and with your descendants after you forever. For you will be doing what is good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. When the Lord your God has cut down before you the nations which you are about to invade and dispossess, and you have dispossessed them and settled in their land, beware of being lured into their ways after they have been wiped out before you. Do not inquire about their gods, saying, how did those nations worship their gods? I too will follow those practices. You shall not act thus towards the Lord your God, for they perform for every god every abhorrent act that the Lord detests. They even offer up their sons and daughters and fire to their gods. Be careful to observe only that which I enjoin upon you, neither add to it nor take away from it.
Now, this is one thing that comes out. It mentions a couple of times when they slaughter an animal and they have to pour the blood out like water, and that's repeated several times. And you would think, why does it say pour the blood out like water? One teaching us a long time ago, when the sacrifices are done at the temple, there is a lot of blood. And I think it's been a while since I've listened to this sermon, but I think they tend to say that the blood just poured like rivers. But what happens when we just pour it out like water? If we think of blood, we say, "Oh man, how gross and how messy and how terrible," and people would complain about it. But if you pour it out like water, you don't think anything of it. If you got a glass of water or a bucket of water and it rained in it, and you needed the bucket for something else, you wouldn't put any significance on it at all. You just pour it out. Mm-hmm. It's nothing. It's not like it's something to be gushed about. Say, oh man, that's so terrible. And that may be part of the reason it says we'll pour it out like water. Mm-hmm. Not to give any significance to it, not to have any emotional reaction because of it. Just pour it out like water. This is also starting on the part about destroying the idols and not to even inquire about how they were worshipped. Right. Because what happens, how they were worshipped. If they knew how they would worship them, they wouldn't even try. They'd see how silly and stupid it is. But if they inquire about it, mm-hmm. Say, well, let me just try it and see what it's like. Right, right. So here God is saying, don't even try and see what it's like. Just don't do it at all. If you saw their practices and you knew their practices, you wouldn't do them. Mm-hmm. Because there would be no intrigue or mystery towards it. I'm tempted to say very few Christians go to Casadega to get their palms read, but I like to think that's the case.
And Casadega is a place that's in D-land. Yeah. A lot of our listeners may not know it's a spiritualist compound where they do a lot of that.
Yeah. So those kind of things, it's a waste of money. But that's because we know about their practices. But if you didn't know about them, you may be intrigued to say, let's investigate it. So God says, no, don't even investigate it. I think that's all I have for that.
Okay. The next is false prophets, Deuteronomy 13:2-19. If there appears among you, and I think maybe this is what you were going to comment on. If there appears among you a prophet or a dream diviner, and he gives you a sign or a portent, saying, let us follow and worship another God, whom you have not experienced, even if the sign or portent that he named to you comes true, do not heed the words of that prophet or the dream diviner, for the Lord your God is testing you to see whether you really love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. Follow none but the Lord your God, and revere none but him. Observe his commandments alone, and heed only his orders. Worship none but him, and hold fast to him. As for that prophet or dream diviner, he shall be put to death, for he urged disloyalty to the Lord your God, when freed from the land of Egypt, and who redeemed you from the house of bondage, to make you stray from the path that the Lord your God commanded you to follow. that you will sweep out evil from your midst. If your brother, your own mother's son, or your son or your daughter, or the wife of your bosom, or the closest friend, entices you in secret, saying, "Come, let us worship other gods," whom neither you nor your fathers have experienced, from among the gods of the people around you, neither near to you, or distant anywhere from one end of the earth to the other. Do not assent or give heed to him. Show him no pity or compassion, and do not shield him, but take his life. Let your hand be the first against him to put him to death, and the hand of the rest of the people thereafter. Stone him to death, for he sought to make you stray from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thus all Israel will hear and be afraid, and such evil things will not be done again in your midst. If you hear it said of one of the towns that the Lord your God is giving you to dwell in, that some scoundrels from among you have gone and subverted the inhabitants of their town, saying, "Come, let us worship other gods, whom you have not experienced," you shall investigate and inquire and interrogate thoroughly. If it is true, the fact is established, that abhorrent thing was perpetuated in your midst, put the inhabitants of the town to the sword, and put its cattle to the sword, doom it and all that is in it to destruction. Gather all its spoil into the open square, and burn the town and all its spoil as a holocaust to the Lord your God, and it shall remain an everlasting ruin, never to be rebuilt. Let nothing that has been doomed stick to your hand, in order that the Lord may turn from his blazing anger and show you compassion, and in his compassion increase you, as he promised your fathers on oath. For you will be heeding the Lord your God, obeying all his commandments, which I enjoin upon you this day, doing what is right in the sight of the Lord your God.
Okay, this is the part where I guess I was jumping in ahead a little. But here, this is the commandment or the admonition not to stray. Not to stray even a little. Mm-hmm. Because once you start straying, mm-hmm. it only gets worse over time. It doesn't get any better. Again, this the part going after gods you don't know. Mm-hmm. But the ones you do know, you pretty much ignore. If you're not following them now, you're not going to pick them up later. But if there's something new you don't know about, that newness, you say, that sounds exciting. Let's give it a shot. And God is saying, no, don't do that. Mm-hmm. And the part also, if someone tries to entice you to do it, that person is to be stoned. Mm-hmm. And you are the person to cast the first stone. If it's a city, you destroy the entire city. In fact, it's not like you take the city and the spoil. You destroy the entire city, cattle and everything, uproot the city, never even live there again. So there's no even remembrance of it. Mm-hmm. There is no knowledge of it. It's just wiped off the face of the earth because it's so bad. And yours used the word Holocaust, mm-hmm. Which has to do with burning. I was kind of maybe a little surprised that didn't translate it. But that burnt offering or burn name is lost favor. Let's see, what else? I think that's all I have for now.
Okay. The next one is of food, tithes, and social equity. Deuteronomy 14:1 through 15:23. You are children of the Lord your God. You shall not gnash yourself or shave the front of your heads because of the dead. For you are a people consecrated to the Lord your God. The Lord your God chose you from among all the people on earth to be his treasured people. You shall not eat anything abhorrent. These are the animals that you may eat: the ox, the sheep, and the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roebuck, the wild goat, the ibex, the antelope, the mountain sheep, and any other animal that has true hooves, which are cleft in two, and brings up the cud. Such you may eat. But the following which do bring up the cud, and have true hooves, which are cleft through, you may not eat: the camel, the hare, and the daman. For although they bring up the cud, they have no true hooves. They are unclean for you. Also the swine, for although it has true hooves, it does not bring up the cud. It is unclean for you. You should not eat of their flesh, or touch their carcasses. These you may eat of, all that live in water. You may eat anything that has fins and scales, but you may not eat of anything that has no fins and scales. It is unclean for you. You may eat of any clean bird. The following you may not eat: the eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture, the kite, the falcon, and the buzzard of any variety, every variety of raven, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, the hawk of any variety, the little owl, the great owl, the white owl, the pelican, the bustard, and the cormorant, the stork, any variety of heron, and hopi, and the bat. All winged swarming things are unclean for you. They may not be eaten. You may eat only clean winged creatures. You shall not eat anything that has died a natural death. Give it to the stranger in your community to eat, or you may sell it to the foreigner. For you are a people consecrated to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. You shall set aside every year 1/10 part of the yield of your sowing that is brought from the field. You shall consume the tithes of your new grain and wine and oil, and the firstlings of your herds and flocks, in the presence of the Lord your God, in the place where he will choose to establish his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God forever. Should the distance be too great for you, should you be unable to transport them, because the place where the Lord your God has chosen to establish his name is far from you, and because the Lord your God has blessed you, you may convert them into money. Wrap up the money and take it with you to the place that the Lord your God has chosen, and spend the money on anything you want: cattle, sheep, wine, other intoxicant, or anything you may desire, and you shall feast there in the presence of the Lord your God, and rejoice with your household. But do not neglect the Levite in your community, for he has no hereditary portion as you have. Every 3rd year you should bring out the full tithe of your yield of that year, but leave it within your settlement. Then the Levite, who has no hereditary portion as you have, and the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow in your settlement shall come and eat their fill, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the enterprises you undertake. Every 7th year you shall practice remission of debts. This shall be the nature of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the due that he claims from his neighbor. He shall not dun his neighbor or kinsman, for the remission proclaimed is of the Lord. You may dun the foreigner, but you must not remit whatever you must remit whatever is due from your kinsman. There shall be no needy among you, since the Lord your God will bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you as a hereditary portion. If only you heed the Lord your God, and take care to keep all this instruction that I enjoin upon you this day. For the Lord your God will bless you, as he has promised you. You will extend loans to many nations, but require none yourself. You will dominate many nations, but they will not dominate you. If, however, there is a needy person among you, one of your kinsmen in any of your settlements in the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not harden your heart that your hand against a needy kinsman. Rather, you must open your hand and lend him sufficient for whatever he needs. Beware lest you harbor the base thought, the 7th year, the year of remission, is approaching, so that you are mean to your needy kinsman and give him nothing. He will cry out to the Lord against you, and you will incur guilt. Give to him readily and have no regrets when you do. For in return the Lord your God will bless you in all your efforts and all your undertaking. For there will never cease to be needy ones in your land, which is why I command you, open your hand to the poor and needy kinsmen in your land. If a fellow Hebrew man or woman is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years. In the 7th year you shall set him free. When you set him free, do not let him go empty-handed. Furnish him out of the flock, threshing floor and vat, with which the Lord your God has blessed you. Bear in mind that you were slaves in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I enjoin this commandment upon you this day. Should he say to you, I do not want to leave, for he loves you and your household, and is happy with you, you shall take an owl and put it through his ear unto the door, and he shall become part of your slave in perpetuity. Do the same with your female slave. When you do set him free, do not feel aggrieved, for in the 6 years he has given you double the service of a hired man. Moreover, the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. You shall consecrate to the Lord your God all female firstlings that are born in your herd and in your flock. You must not work your firstlings or ox, or shear your firstlings sheep. You and your household shall eat it annually before the Lord your God in the places the Lord will choose. But if it has a defect, lameness or blindness, any serious defect, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. Eat it in your settlements, the unclean among you, no less than the clean, just like the gazelle and the deer. Only you must not partake of its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water.
Okay, that's quite a bit in here that's going back and forth. And talking about sacrifices. Actually, there's some new commandments that are in here that aren't found in the prior 4 books of Torah. Some of these are new, or additions, I should say. But this one here, the main topic here, has to do with the poor, and how we should treat the poor. And you think that maybe there's some inconsistencies that doesn't seem right. If you're blessed, I think the scripture even says there won't be any poor among you. There shall be no poor among you, and for the Lord shall greatly bless thee in the land. But eventually, later on, it says you will have poor.
You will have poor, right?
And
Yeshua said that the poor will always be with you.
It also says it here too, in verse 11, for the poor shall never cease out of the land. And this has to do with you have to give to the poor. Now, we Christians think of it as charity, but from the teachers, this isn't charity. In fact, they said they call it tzedakah as a legal term, and if a Jew does not give enough money to tzedakah, they can take him to court, and the court can order him to give more money to tzedakah. Yeah, it's not charity is voluntary. Tzedakah is compulsory and can be enforced in law. So This they have to do. The idea here is when they do give to the poor. Let me get the easy part first. Everyone is expected to do tzedakah, even the poor.
Right.
Is to give.
Right.
And you say, well, gee, if I give to the poor, and the poor gives to someone else, why don't I just give to that someone else and cut out the middleman? It's an idea of giving a person some dignity.
Right.
And this is what happened.
Right.
You can be poor and no dignity, or you can be poor and have a little dignity.
Right.
And requiring a poor person to give tzedakah, maybe I'll even call it charity because that's what we used to hear. It gives them some dignity. And that's part of it. Some people use the word, I hate that word, social justice.
Yeah.
But that's part of it.
But it has nothing to do with social justice here. These are commandments by God.
Right. They're commandments.
They're commandments that God said this is what you do.
Yeah, in your society.
For the poor and the stranger. That this is right. How you take. This is your social system of how you take care of the poor, and so.
Well, you said social system. Some say social justice.
No,
but
I'm not.
You're doing just what I think the word justice has been pretty well twisted.
Yes, twisted. No, these are God's commandment of how you ought to take care of people who are within your sphere, who are, for whatever reason, they're in the category of stranger, widow, orphan.
Yeah.
And this is how God has set up to take care of them.
Right. Okay. But this is compulsory. This isn't.
Yes.
This isn't. Voluntary. And there's some rationale behind it because there's some human dignity involved. And in fact, you don't give to a person in such a way that it embarrasses them. So some tend to say, well, most of the giving should be, anonymous.
Where the giving in that time, because we're talking about an agricultural society, the giving was they were to leave a corner of their land so that the poor would go and get the stuff themselves. Nobody gave it to them. They had to go work for it.
Well, that was one way, but I'm sure people were given money. In fact, when the guy worked for you for 6 years as a slave, you gave him a lot of stuff before he left. So he could start a business, so he could take care of his family, and also he could give tzedakah or charity.
He had done work already. It's not like he hadn't done anything. They weren't giving him anything.
Well, no, he had to. Well, yes, at the end of 6 years, he was given a lot of stuff.
What I'm saying is he worked. It's not like he was working all that time. And yes, he was provided. I like provided with that, because it says in here, you don't send him out. You provide him with something. He's done work for you. It's not like he's some person who's been lying around. No, he's actually done work.
Right. He's worked for 5. He's worked for 6 years, and you can say at the end of the 6 years, it says, well, you work your time, you're free to go. But he doesn't go empty-handed. Of course, he's paid off his debt for those 6 years, but he doesn't leave empty-handed, and he gets a bunch of stuff before he leaves. And one curious thing it said, he goes free in the 7th year, but it also says while he's working for you in the 6 years, whatever he does is doubled.
What does that sound like?
It sounds like Shabbat.
Shabbat, that's right.
Shabbat.
That's sure right.
Yeah.
On the 6th day, it's double.
Yeah. So so in that 6th year while he's working for you, it's double. Mm-hmm. So you're not losing a year. You can't say, well, I'll hire him for 7 years, mm-hmm. But 1 year gets cut off, and I lose all that labor. Mm-hmm. So, nope. When that 6th year it's double.
Mm-hmm.
But this is God's provision for the poor, and I still say, well, gee, God makes provision for the poor, but it says that if they follow his command, there wouldn't be any poor among you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the ideal. And God knows that if he gives a command,
right,
we're not going to follow it.
Right.
There's going to be poor.
So that's what, yes.
And that's why I
He's
think
making
this has
contingency
been
plan.
making provision, because those commandments are at a high standard,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not going to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to meet them. And I guess if he knew we were going to meet the standard, there wouldn't be any need for the curses.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's part of it. We couldn't meet the standard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's poor. And yes, even Jesus said that. And he had to remind them.
Yeah.
You will always have the poor.
Always be with you.
Right. And probably that's why God doesn't rely on charity.
Right.
He says, no,
Right.
this is compulsory.
Right.
Compulsory.
Right. Right.
And is enforceable through the courts. Oh, and that's all I have for that.
Well, I know I've mentioned in other videos, I have a friend, dear friend, who at a stage in her life, because part of the scriptures says every third year, I believe, that you're to go to the place that the Lord has provided, and he's talking about Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And if the distance is too far and you couldn't bring all the animals, you could sell the animals,
Right.
take that money, go and have
Right.
a good time.
Right.
And that's what she did. She would go and to Israel
Mm-hmm.
and have a good time. And I mean, this is, oh, that's so neat. So neat. All right. The last part is the holy days, Deuteronomy 16, 1 through 17. And it reads, observe the month of Abib and order a Passover sacrifice to the Lord your God, for it was in the month of Abib at night that the Lord your God freed you from Egypt. You shall slaughter the Passover sacrifice for the Lord your God from the flock and the herd in the place where the Lord will choose to establish his name. You shall not eat anything leavened with it. For 7 days, therefore, you shall eat thereafter. You shall eat unleavened bread, bread of distress, for you departed from the land of Egypt hurriedly, so that you may remember the day of your departure from the land of Egypt as long as you live. For every 7 days no leaven shall be found with you in your territory, and none of the flesh of what you slaughter on the evening of the first day shall be left until morning. You are not permitted to slaughter the Passover offering in any of the settlements that the Lord your God is giving you, but at the place where the Lord your God will choose to establish his name. There alone shall you slaughter the Passover sacrifice in the evening at sundown, the time of the day when you depart from Egypt. You shall cook and eat it at the place which the Lord your God will choose, and in the morning you may start back on your journey home. After eating unleavened bread 6 days, you shall hold a solemn gathering for the Lord your God. On the 7th day you shall do no work. You shall count off 7 weeks. Start to count the 7 weeks when you sickle it. When the sickle is first put to the standing grain, then you shall observe the Feast of Weeks. For the Lord your God offer your free will contribution, according as the Lord your God has blessed you. You shall rejoice before the Lord your God with your son and daughter, your male and female slave, the Levite in your communities, and the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow in your midst, at the place where the Lord your God will choose to establish his name. Bear in mind that you were slaves in Egypt, and take care to obey these laws. After the ingathering from your threshing floor and your vat, you shall hold the Feast of Booths for 7 days. You shall rejoice in your festival with your son and daughter, your male and female slaves, the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow in your communities. You shall hold festivals for the Lord your God 7 days in the place that the Lord will choose. For the Lord your God will bless all your crops and all your undertakings, and you shall have nothing but joy. 3 times a year on the feast of the unleavened bread, on the feast of weeks, and on the feast of booths, all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place that he will choose. They will not appear before the Lord empty-handed, but each with his own gift according to the blessing that the Lord your God has bestowed upon you.
I think this one, speaks of the Passover and wants this to be an annual celebration, remembering the Exodus from Egypt, how God delivered them. And also, he names a place where the celebration should take place. And he doesn't tell them right offhand where it will be. He simply uses the phrase over and over again, a place the Lord thy God will choose. And tradition says, the teacher says, that same place was where it was built was where Isaac was
the Temple Mount.
The Temple Mount, the binding where Isaac was.
The
Akita, yeah, okay. And also said that's where God took the dust of the ground and formed Adam. And it was Jacob's ladder. A lot of things happened there. So it was a lot of history there. And so this is where the temple was to be built in the future. But it does use some kind of vague how would I call it, vague place. Didn't specify it, but the place where the Lord will choose. I don't know, perhaps it was a place that they would want to choose as well, and God just kind of foreknew what they would choose or where they would want it to be, because they know it probably something related to Abraham, at least that much. Also, when Noah sacrificed after the flood, it says it's the same place. So there's a lot of tradition as to where this place is and and the number of events that happened there.
Is that it?
Right. Yep, that's it.
All right. We have done as God has commanded. We've done this Shabbat by reading His Word and getting His instructions. Because without the instructions, we don't know how to proceed. So we thank God for His instructions, the Torah, and the books that expound on the Torah, the prophets, and the New Testament. But the Torah is the foundation of who we are, who we believe in. And we thank God for this opportunity to delve into His Word. And as we were going to do the rest of the day for the Shabbat from sundown Friday into sundown Saturday. So the Parsha for this coming week is called Shoftim, or judges or magistrates. And it's taken from Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9. And my Torah is divided into 3 parts. The first, the administration of law and state. 1, the Deuteronomy 16:18 to 18:8. The second, administration of law and state number 2, Deuteronomy 18:9 through 19:21. And administration of law and state number 3, Deuteronomy 21 through 21:9. And it reads, Shoftim v'shotarim titen lecha b'kol she'arecha asher Adonai Elohecha נותן לך לשבטיך, ושפטו את העם משפט tzedek. You shall appoint magistrates and officials for your tribes and all the settlements that the Lord your God is giving you, and they shall govern the people with due justice. So we look forward to this as we are heading toward the high holy days. Rosh Hashanah of the Feast of Trumpets, and Yom Teruah, and also Yom Kippur and Sukkot. So we are quickly advancing because it's in September. I think Rosh Hashanah is September 15th, and on from there. So we are quickly advancing toward those feast days, holy days. So I'll give you a choice, Mr. Jones. Do you want to do?
We'll do a new one.
Okay, let's see if I have it. Let's see if I have it. Thought I had. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. All right, here it is. Let me put this here. All right, we'll do Kadosh.
Okay.
And we'll sing this song.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai, Elohim, Sebaot, Adonai, Elohim, Sebaot.
Repeat it again.
Kadosh, 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 Kadosh.
Amen. Oh, you want to?
Oh,
You want to go? Okay, where?
well, I was just going to be Adonai.
Adonai,
Elohim, Sebaot, Adonai, Elohim, Sebaot.
Oh, you can do a share and that. A
Share
share. Haya, Ve'ore, Ve'aro. Asher, Hayona, Ve'ore, Ve'aro. One more time. Kadosh, 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 Kadosh. Amen and amen.
Amen.
We thank the Lord for this opportunity to be before Him, to learn of Him, and to worship at His feet. And we are waiting, but not in the sense of waiting and doing nothing. We're waiting for our Messiah to return. And He is closer. The birth pangs are closer and closer. And so we know that His time for His arrival is close. But we do not wait without hope, or we do not wait doing nothing. There's much for us to do, much prayer, thanksgiving, praise, and adoration to do in order for us to usher Him in to this world. And so we must continue to study His Word, and so that we can usher Him into this realm. Anything else you have?
I know.
All right. So we say
Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov.
Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a good week.
Have a good week.
Whole world is waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat. Whole world is waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat. Whole world is waiting. Sing the song of Sabbath. Whole world is waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat. I'm also waiting, waiting to sing the song of. I'm also waiting to sing the song of Shabbat.